That's the message from Chef Alex Green and Dallas Rose of Mileta in Lexington, Kentucky, who I'm talking to today. You're going to get a lot out of this one. You will sense the intensity with which these guys not only run their business, but attack the restaurant industry. And talking to them, and I talked to them yesterday, and reflecting on it now, I realize the common thread. All these operators are they don't fall into the restaurant industry. They are in attack mode as they go into it. And I think that is part of what it takes to be successful. But it just occurred to me yesterday, that clicked. And again, these guys are intense, they're focused, they're creative, they're fun, they're really, really smart. So enjoy today's episode of the Restaurant Incubator. My name is Brandon Sharp. I'm the host here. As an executive chef, I earned 7 Michelin stars, and now here in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, own and operate 3 restaurants: Hawthorne and Wood, Proximo, and Bluebird. Sorry, forgot that for a minute and got them out of order. I've also built some tools to help you with your budgeting and business planning side of the restaurant business. So if you want a little help with that, click the link in the show notes. On to today's episode. Enjoy this conversation with Alex Green and Dallas Rose of Mileta in Lexington, Kentucky. Stay humble, stay hungry. Welcome back to the Restaurant Incubator. We got a couple of very interesting fellows with us today. Gentlemen, please introduce yourselves. Tell us who you are. Tell us where you work.
Sure. My name is Dallas Rose. I'm the proprietor and managing partner at Mileta Restaurant in Lexington, Kentucky.
And I'm Alex Green, the executive chef and Dallas's partner in Mileta.
Excellent. So I've got your August menu from Mileta in front of me. And aside from looking delicious, I was really captivated by the way that it's written. So I think back in the 50s, if I look at old hotel menus, it just says oysters. And then skip ahead to the 90s and it'll say oysters, and there'll be an entire paragraph of description. And the way y'all have it written is with a complete description, which is really cool. But the lead item, the center of the plate item or the bold-faced item is not at the beginning. It's within there. So the descriptions flow much more organically. Whose idea was that? I love this.
It was actually chef's idea. I mean, we noodled on that, and the first kind of couple concept menus, it was a little more in the, I don't know, avant-garde is the right way, but oysters, and then just boom, 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 mignonette, whatever the accoutrement, three words. But we were like, the food that we're doing for the market here is trying to push the boundaries a little bit of what people are used to. And we felt like we needed to be a little more descriptive and less cryptic with the menu descriptions, is try to find, but to your point, we didn't want it to be a paragraph and just kill people with overload. So, we kind of noodled on it, and Alex came up with that format, and we thought it was, elegant, still got, descriptive enough, made the food sound sexy, but without being kind of overbearing.
Yeah. And I imagine it encourages guests to read the entire menu description so they know the whole thing. And then do your servers get a lot more questions about the menu, you think, because of the way it's written? And
I don't know that they get more questions than any other restaurant. I think they do a very good, we educate them, they taste everything. They have copious, probably more than they need to know, tasting notes on every dish. And so we try to put them in a position to be able to answer those questions, thoughtfully and concisely. But at the same, try to educate the guest at the beginning of the meal too on how things work and what to expect. So I don't know if it's generated more questions than typical, but guests seem to appreciate it, and I guess fewer questions in the sense that they're not confused. Mm-hmm. Maybe is the right answer.
Okay. And Chef, it looks like you cooked all over the South, Memphis, New Orleans. How did those experiences or your time there influence the food at Mileta?
Mileta's just kind of whatever I think tastes good. I mean, mm-hmm. we definitely are quickly grouped into being an Italian spot just because pasta is kind of the cornerstone. But if you really look at our menu, it's very not strictly Italian. It's not authentic Italian or Italian American. Just kind of whatever we think tastes good. So that's really what I've learned, is just cooking from wherever you're at. So we get, as much local as we can. We're somewhat blessed here in Kentucky as we get all 4 seasons very much in full force. So we have a huge abundance of between produce and animals and beef and pork and chicken and what else. So again, being in New Orleans, I've worked at more kind of modern Italian restaurants down there,
Okay.
with more like kind of a southern leaning. And same in Memphis I was at Hog and Hominy, which is very much southern and Italian, nouveau, whatever. So that's kind of what I bring here is we're Italian-ish, or we'll take an Italian ingredient, but we're presenting it in a way that is not inherently Italian or Italian American. Just kind of
Got it.
for
Okay.
local ingredient we can.
Yeah, and I was actually going to ask about the growing season. I don't imagine it's too different from North Carolina, but you already said all 4 seasons, and I wanted to ask further about y'all have raw bar, house made pasta, looks like a ton of local produce, and is it just an ongoing thing evaluating what you can source locally versus what you need to maybe bring in from Italy? Maybe you're bringing in 24-month-old Parmigiano. How do you decide on those things?
Yeah, so I go to the farmers market, multiple days a week. I'm there 3-4 times a week. We are great with one of our purveyors deals a lot in Kentucky Proud Products, which is like the state government's kind of stamp for Kentucky produced items. So they stock a lot of those things. So it makes purchasing a lot easier. I'm having to make one stop instead of 30 stops. We're also somewhat fortunate being here in Kentucky is UPS is World Hub is in Louisville. So I can get things brought in very quickly from around the world, almost overnight. And here in the restaurant, even though we're an hour away from Louisville, pretty quickly and efficiently. But again, we're very fortunate to have some awesome farmers that are able to keep up with my demand and.
Yeah, don't let Chef downplay the work he puts into it though, because I mean, sourcing all these guys at the we talked to 100 different purveyors and 15 beef guys and and still have a couple in our Rolodex that if one's out, we've got 3 or 4 backups, and we've got a mushroom guy that looks like a mushroom guy you think he'd look like.
Right.
But yeah, no, there's a couple one-stop shops that allow us to get some Kentucky stuff in without having to comb through everybody, but we do have a pretty deep list of vendors that we've cultivated over the last year to kind of feed the beast.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, like my egg lady, even their eggs from 45 minutes away, and so she rolls up, every Friday morning, and we carry in like 40 dozen eggs to fuel the pasta machine. But yeah, it's nice. I mean, they still have feathers attached to the eggs. How fresh they are.
Excellent. Well, as you said, you don't think of yourself as necessarily an Italian restaurant, but that you're, with pasta being the cornerstone of it, you're going to be at least perceived that way. So when you were coming up with the concept for Mileta originally, what holes did you see, or what niche did you see to fill in the Lexington scene?
I think there were a couple. There's nobody really making handmade pasta and take it. There was a shop that's making pasta, but it was more for retail consumption, but nobody was doing that in a restaurant setting at a high level. So it felt like that was one niche that we could fill. Cocktail, the bar program, I think we focused very heavily on that too, and just giving that as just as much attention and intention as the food offering. So and that's there's some great bars in Lexington, but again, I think for the size of our city, we're 5 to 10 years behind Charleston, Raleigh, Nashville, some of these other is as it relates to just quantity of restaurants executing at a higher level. So I think we saw a gap there, and then frankly too, from the front of the house, design and vibe standpoint, there's a lot of the great restaurants here have been around for 30, 40 years. And I think cater to a little bit older clientele. Alex and myself are in our 30s. That's not just who we cater towards, but the restaurant reflects, I think, kind of our age and our tastes. And so wanted to do something new and fresh and a little more cosmopolitan that hadn't been done here. So I guess it was a number of holes in the market that we saw that we thought we could fill.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Well,
really just went to a restaurant I wanted to go eat at myself.
Yeah.
yeah.
And when I'm traveling to Chicago or New York or wherever, what restaurants am I enjoying the most? And the goal was pick up. You could pick up Mileta and drop it in any of those cities, and it'd be just as successful.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. What you mentioned cocktails. I'm not a mixologist. I'm also not a pastry chef, and so and if my message to our pastry chef or our mixologist is usually just make the best version of people's favorites, which is not a very creative instruction for them. And great mixologists and great pastry chefs like to they can. It's almost like sorcery to me because it's not the same sort of calculus that I'm used to with savory food. So, but how do y'all approach cocktail composition and how do you approach the dessert menu?
So the cocktails, it's a guy named John Shelton runs our beverage program. He was at Cannon in Seattle for a number of years, ran 21C's bar program at their Cincinnati location for a couple of years. It's a very accomplished, deep, a dictionary of cocktail knowledge. Very creative dude. So it's a collaborative effort between myself and him and Chef's. I've been behind the bar a bunch in my day, so is Chef, and so we approach it, very collaboratively, and then kind of give him enough rope to hang himself and say, go be creative. We'll reel you back in. You write, we'll edit, and similar to kind of I think how Chef approaches the kitchen, how we approach the dishes. Like come up with whatever you think is the best thing, and then we can edit it and make it executable for our 120-seat restaurant or however what volume we're going to do. But we most of our signature cocktails, there's some kind of house infused or house made ingredient. We're making all the syrups, a lot of bitters, tinctures, kind of everything under the sun. And so view it as almost another kitchen. I mean, we're trying to do stuff that you're not going to get at any other bar. But we also have a full list of classics and take pride in executing the best old fashioned, very simple, but we're just going to do it perfect glassware. The ice is going to be right. It's going to be the right temperature. The garnish is going to be correct. I don't know if that answers the question or if I'm just rambling, but it's a little bit of an iterative process that's kind of an all hands on deck approach, but we let John kind of run with the creative vision and then reel him back in if it gets too out in the left field.
I actually really enjoy cocktails. I kind of think it's very similar to cooking, just with liquids. And so I find a lot of overlap between those. So I actually have a lot of fun getting in here on like Mondays when we're closed, and me and John will kind of work on a cocktail together. I think it's a lot of fun.
Nice.
So it is very much a collaborative effort.
Okay. Well, in terms of menu engineering and specifically in terms of driving revenue, I'm wondering if your servers are they doing like half portions of pasta, or because it looks like the pastas are entree price, and so it looks like it's not a restaurant where you're doing first course then pasta then trying to sell them an entree. So how do you what's your revenue driving message to your staff there?
Definitely shareable is how we try to market it. I mean, that's what I enjoy to eat.
Yeah.
With me and my wife got the dinner, we're not just ordering our own appetizer, our own whatever we're ordering, so we can, get a little bit of that. So we definitely encourage, a table of four to, get several different pastas so you can, get a full representation of what we're offering instead of kind of limiting yourself.
And I think the game, I guess at a very simple level, is if it's a two top, we'd like to sell you two small plates, have you split two pastas and maybe split an entree.
Yeah. Okay.
So you get a little bit of everything. Check average is roughly 65 to 75 a head, including a cocktail before tax and gratuity, which is kind of where we want to be. And I think pricing wise, it's the pasta portions are somewhere between a traditional preemie like mid course portion like you'd get in Italy and an entree portion. It's not quite an entree portion. It's a little bit bigger than a preemie portion. So tried to find the sweet spot. And there's some competitors here that the pasta dishes are 30 to 50. they're giving you a much bigger portion, but I don't like to eat like that. I'd prefer quality over quantity personally. And that's another thing that I think restaurants and specifically in this city do that we didn't want to. One thing we saw that we wanted to do differently is I'm not going to kill you with quantity. I want to give you the best product that I can at a reasonable price. And if it's a smaller portion, it is what it is. But we want to give you the appropriate portion, and have you leave here feeling, if you took a date here, you should be able to go back home and continue the date and not want to go straight to sleep. Is, I guess the most PC way of putting it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I would have trouble. Like the pasta looks fantastic. I would have trouble deciding. So it sounds like you have a marble bar, pasta room, rose room lounge, and they were all, I assume, not I assume, but they must have been deliberate and intentional design choices. And I've always been frustrated in the design and build out process because the things that are nice to have, like light fixtures, usually are the first to go because of the things that I have to have. So when you think back to the build out process, was there other stuff that you did have to value engineer out that that were nice to haves, and are you happy with like the essentials that you feel you stuck with?
Think I'm very happy with how everything turned out. We did, I guess the way we kind of approach it is, to me, in most rooms, you have like a couple opportunities for big statement pieces that people remember and can really change the feel of a room with one thing. And to me, the stone on a bar is especially we have a monster 24-seat bar in the middle of the room that's kind of the showpiece. So it's like that has to be a showstopper for us. And so almost, we're going to spend money on the stone there. The pasta room is obviously, we want that to be incredibly sexy. We're going to spend money there, but can we paint the place ourselves and save 20 grand? Which we did, little half and half. We contracted some of it out. I co-GC'd it with the project with my uncle who, I GC'd the casework and the furniture and sourced a bunch of the stuff. And he handled a lot of the, trades, plumbing, electric, et cetera, we were able to save money, but we were in here, 12 hours a day for, the entire build out process. So was chefs, so were some of the sous, the front of house guys, just wherever we can make ourselves useful.
Yeah.
We're here.
Cliche, but it was blood, sweat, and tears.
Yeah, put us to work. But I think, especially advice to somebody trying to open a spot is you some of those things need to be non-negotiable. And if you got to, cut somewhere else, the key is cutting things that the guest doesn't see, to the extent you can. I mean, that's the best part of the game is you want to appear as generous as possible behind the scenes, pinching pennies. And I think the build out is kind of the same way. You could still make a very, elegant and sexy dining room with expensive looking things, and, be able to skimp elsewhere and still get a nice cohesive result. And then part of it was necessity. So that the space is 7,500 feet, which is probably 2,500 to 3,000 square feet bigger than what we wanted.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that was kind of the impetus to create the Rose Room. We carved off and basically built a restaurant within the restaurant that can do dinner for 40, has its own bar, own liquor license. And so that allowed us to shrink the main dining room, make it feel more intimate, help us kind of achieve that design goal, gave us some extra PDR space, which especially on this side of town is almost non-existent, has been economically fantastic for us. So I guess that design choice was more of a, let's figure out the best way to use the space. And then once we saw, what the room was going to look like, it was, let's spend the money we need to make it nice, and do it the right way. And luckily that room is not so big. So getting expensive stone for a 8-foot bar is not going to break the budget.
Mm-hmm. Well, it sounds like you're constantly doing the calculus in your mind or in the design process of function and form. I am not an aesthete. I struggle to, I could not design a restaurant aesthetically, but I have no problem looking at, overhead of a drawing and say, okay, the stoves need to go here, the hallway needs to go here, that sort of thing. So I imagine, did y'all start with a blank space? And if so, how did you work in the ergonomics? The back bar goes here, the restrooms go there. How did you think about that and couple it with the design itself?
We were lucky, and one of the reasons this space was attractive to us is the back of house bones were largely in. So all the hoods, coolers, dish, all that stuff was in place, working. Um, we had to basically gut the line, new equipment. I think we were able to save maybe a couple pieces, but it was more just playing Tetris in the back of house. And another thing about having, a chef as a partner, and I've worked in kitchens, I've been in kitchens, I could probably put something together, but having somebody that's worked in a number of higher volume kitchens, able to come in and design it and lay it out and be able to think through, okay, when there's 220 people in here and we're banging on a Saturday, if the pasta cooker's on the left versus the right, how does that screw us? And so I think, having chef be able to map it out and think through execution outside of just, in theory, does it lay out the right way? In practice, is it going to work? I think was very important.
If you had been a fly on the wall when, we were in the process of ordering stuff, I was literally just standing in the kitchen and like acting out like I'm tossing with a saute pan. All right, I need an oven where the door opens to the left or a door that opens to the right, thinking, and I feng shuied the heck out of that kitchen, trying to get, maximizing usable space and getting the right things in there. But it literally, I looked probably like an insane person.
Yeah.
Like I was just doing an interpretive dance and before we were buying any equipment, just figuring out, how the flow would, work best.
But then there were like the front of house, the bar was kind of in the position that it's in. We shrunk it by about 10 feet, and then, the bathrooms were in. So didn't really move any of those, but the rest of the dining room was really, down to the studs, and just did the best that we could to create as many intimate spaces and comfortable, places to sit that we could. And, obviously every restaurant's got a bad table or two. We tried to eliminate as many of those as we could.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, again, the space was, at least back of house and big ticket items were already in, which was, if that weren't the case, we probably wouldn't be here.
Right. Yeah. Well, Chef, I'm glad you touched on all those little things because it's so important to, how many restaurants have you worked in where like, man, if the walk-in door had hinges on the right instead of hinges on the left, like this wouldn't be a problem and I wouldn't have crashed into her and all this stuff. Or, the dish machine behind the bar has got to open and where's the bartender going to stand when, so thank you for teasing that out because that's those details make a huge difference for the operators.
So I always kind of teach my cooks, like you can make the best dish in the world, but unless it logistically works, it's not going to go.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah. And so you have to really think of the logistics more than just almost than the taste of the dish when you're, coming up with a new menu item.
So how do you on that, Chef, on that point, how do you coach because it still happens to me all the time. The sous chefs come up with a fantastic dish, but it is way too complex, way too many touches, that sort of thing. How do you coach them on saying, okay, this is amazing, but you need to take things out? Or do you start earlier in the design press and say the dish can only have this many components or this many touches? Do you edit it in the beginning? Do you edit at the end? Is it more collaborative? How does that work?
So whenever we have new employees start, I have this whole like back of house kitchen manual I made or like ethos. But in part of that, I have it, this very kind of laid out. If you have a dish idea, always come to us about it. But we kind of treat it like the elementary school, like make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, test where it's like open the drawer, pull out the knife and all that. And so I really want them to like think of it in those terms of who's prepping it, where are we ordering it from, what's the food cost in it, but then what's the pickup on it, how many touches are there, how many garnishes are there, how can we pre-render out the pancetta versus doing it to order, like. And so we literally go through before we ever even make the dish, to really let you think those things, because then if all those boxes are checked, then I'll order in the product and then we'll start R&Ding it. But I want them to start thinking more like a chef that can, run the kitchen than just cook in a kitchen.
Yeah, no, that's a great exercise. Well, when at the higher level, like at the management, executive, ownership level, I assume, Chef, you have menu R&D, food costs, you have kitchen leadership, and then Dallas, you have front of house hiring, guest experience design, those sorts of things. And I think you also have a general manager as well. So at what I guess at what decision levels do y'all stay in your lane? And then also, I guess more importantly, at what decision levels do y'all come together and say, okay, this level has to be consensus? Is it hiring and firing? Is it, menu direction? How does that work?
Think it, again, it's pretty collaborative, and I think one of the reasons, one of the reasons I think we've made great partners, and why Alex was so attracted to me as a partner was we both worked in front of house, back of house. He understands the number side. I understand number side. Like we speak the same language.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he trusts my judgment, my taste, and I trust his judgment and taste. And so, as it relates to food, we decide on a direction, and he runs with it, and I give him my opinions, and we'll, generally we haven't had a fight yet on food. And I think we're knock on wood, we're aligned, and think a lot the same. But we communicate frequently too. So there's very few instances where there's some issue and we've got to call, a powwow of the elders to come to like we're generally both pretty much in the know of what's going on, front of house and back of house.
That's how we're here together.
We're here together.
We're not silent partners or anything. It is us
working the thing.
And we're in the sticks with everybody else.
So I guess, we have different focuses that, he's overseeing all the back house stuff. I'm overseeing all the front of house stuff, but we're both plugged into both, I would say. And, if he and I, want to make a decision, that he thinks warrants my input or vice versa, then we'll do it. But outside of like major partnership decisions that we had to put in writing, there's not really anything that we formally say, yes, well, let's, we need you and I to both agree on this. I think we just kind of, which I don't know if that's the right way or the wrong way, but so far I've just kind of acted in tandem, and
a lot of trust.
Yeah. Have not had any issues.
Cool. Well, thinking about we talked about design and ergonomics, and think about what is outside the restaurant. So if you had, somebody who, you were a mentor to them, and they're hot shot, and they're coming up with their own restaurant. They have this great idea. The concept sounds great. They have the chops, they have the capital. But one thing that I feel a lot of people don't think about is like visibility and parking and which side of the street you're on, if you're fast casual and that sort of thing. Like, how did you think about those sorts of exterior parameters that are, beyond the four walls of Mileta when you were trying to find a space and ended up on this space in particular?
I think, obviously parking is incredibly important. That's one of and before we landed at the mall, looked at a number of different locations downtown, another suburban location that's very close to where we are now, both of which are challenged parking locations. And I know when I make a decision to go somewhere to eat, that plays into it. And I don't think that I'm unique in that. So we were very focused on that. We have unlimited free parking effectively. Signage, we're on the busiest road in the city, but we've got massive, 20-foot signage that's visible from the road. So I checked a lot of those boxes. We're in an unorthodox location for the kind of food that we're doing. We're at the busiest mall in Kentucky. We're right next door to a cheesecake factory, which, I think it's a good and a bad thing. I think the good certainly outweighs the bad. It's very high foot traffic. One of the reasons we got comfortable with the location too is we were able to see visibility into the sales numbers that the rest of the restaurants are doing, and they're all
cool.
That gave me a ton of comfort. But no, parking is incredibly important. I think you can be in the sexiest building anywhere, but if people can't get to you, or it's a pain in the ass to get to you, they're going to make a different decision.
Yeah.
And I think, while we would fit in a downtown, historic building in some sexy location, I think we wanted to be accessible to everybody. And I think if the product is good, people will go anywhere for it is kind of my thought. And it's, maybe a challenge to get somebody that lives downtown, that only goes out downtown to come to the mall to eat. But I think if I get them in the door one time, and we've been proven right, we've got a ton, a large contingent of regulars from downtown that schlep it out to the mall and have dinner with us because the product is good and they can't get anywhere else in town. So, and I think you got to be mindful of that too when you're picking your location. Is it something are you a convenience based, concept that you need to be on the right side on the way home so you can sling the burger and fries to go for the family? Or is it a date night spot that it doesn't really matter which side of the road you're on? It's premeditated. I think both of those things can impact your success rate at, either a downtown spot where somebody's got to pay to park or valet, or it's more of a challenge, or you're thinking about, vehicle count and accessibility. I think it really depends on what kind of food you're doing and what the bet is.
Mhm. All right. Well, when it comes to your service staff on the floor, like there's some challenging items on your menu to pronounce, and I'm sure that guests pronounce, names of pasta wrong, and maybe they don't say pangrattato correctly. I don't know if I'm saying it correctly, but I always feel it's a fine line. I mean, we have some folks who come in from out of town who are you're not super educated in terms of fine dining. They're excited to eat here. And so I try to get my staff, I'm like, well, you need to make them feel smart, and you're not here to educate them. You're here to delight them. But at the same time, so how do you tell your staff to kind of thread that needle, or find that balance between guests who maybe aren't as sophisticated, but you still want to make them feel smart and welcome?
Yeah. No, I mean, I think a large part of it is, I don't want to call it education, but kind of the quick spiel on the front end, put them at ease. I think our service style here, it's certainly a more refined atmosphere, but it's, the music is bumping. It's more of a house party feeling here. Our servers are in black t-shirts and jeans. It's a little more relaxed. So I think part of that disarms the guest as well. And then again, going back to the way we wrote the menu, if you'll notice, like all the main component of each dish is bolded so that if the guy comes in and he can't pronounce pangrattato or whatever it is, he can just point, he can say, I want the chicken, or I want this, I tried to make it as easy as possible for them to not have to butcher a word and embarrass themselves. Because that's one of my pet peeves too, is when you go to a restaurant and they make you feel dumb, or
you gotta feel
you're not cool enough because you can't, you don't know what the cheese is. So and I think it's more in just the way we want our folks to treat people in general. Is like make them feel welcome, like they're in your home. They're there to have a good time. We're not there to educate them or make them feel like we're cooler than they are. We just want them to eat delicious food and have a fucking blast.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, on chef, on the menu side, so when you open Mileta, you had a vision for the menu and the items that were going to be on it. Have you had to course correct in terms of pricing or portion size or particular ingredients? And was there one dish maybe that you had that you love but had to get the axe because the guests weren't having it?
Not really. I mean, knock on wood, most things have been received fairly well.
Uh-huh.
And our pricing, if anything, it's had to tick up some. It's just food costs, have changed.
Yeah.
But we try to, be as conservative with those changes. We don't want to all of a sudden double the pricing on stuff. So, also labor is a big thing. I like to joke the only thing we don't make is the Heinz ketchup. So our menu cost is definitely labor. Is a big part of not just food cost when we determine the pricing of stuff, because we are doing everything from scratch. I mean, something as simple as our crispy potatoes, like a 3.5-day process.
Right.
And it's kind of like a fancy tater tot. And, think it takes so many man hours to make a tater tot is something people aren't, I guess, used to doing. It's easier to open up a bag from the freezer and drop them. But so, yeah.
I think one thing, and I think you mentioned this in the list that you sent over, but we'll play with the dish too, and maybe it's an entree, or maybe like we wanted to put octopus on for the longest time. It's crazy expensive, and we wrestled with it, and it's like, okay, we can put two tentacles on a plate. We've got to charge 35 or high 30s for this octopus to make it make sense. Is the guest, do we do it as an entree? It's a 50 something dollar octopus and they get a monster portion, or can we sling two tentacles as a small plate? And are people willing to pay mid 30s for a small plate? We don't know, but that may be like, that's kind of the exercise. Like, here's the ingredient. We love the dish, but is there a way? How do we frame it on the menu that's palatable to the guest? We're still making money on it, and obviously we're fine to have things that are loss leaders, and some things are going to be higher food cost items than others, but we don't want to, have 4 or 5 of those things on and end up in a bad position. So I guess we haven't had to tweak pricing too much, just because I think we're mindful on the front end of how the dish is going to fit in before we even get to that point.
It's always, you only get one first impression with your guest. And so if you go to a restaurant that you're like, the price isn't worth what I'm getting on the plate, it's hard to then win them back.
Yeah.
So in my mind, it's always better to
Earn some trust first, and then
before we
can
start going on the big ticket items and play around that pricing too aggressively.
Yeah. Yeah. And what is your formula for the wine list? How do you price the wines by the glass and then by the bottle?
Normally by the bottle, depending on the bottle, we're 3 to 4x our bottle cost. If it's a higher ticket wine, it may be a lower multiple of that. But for the everything between 50 and $150 is probably around that number, and then glass, or probably whatever the bottle cost is, that's the glass pour. Kind of we can make 4x on the wine is the goal.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. So Dallas, it sounds like you had years of experience in finance and real estate, and so you're definitely ahead of the curve of most sous chefs or chef de cuisines that become restaurant owners. So what do you think are the bare minimums that someone needs to do in terms of budgeting and business planning from a financial perspective, either to satisfy investors, landlords, bankers, or just for their own security, to know that they know what's going on with the books?
I think if you're not capable of doing it, you should find somebody that is capable of doing it, and at a high level, and whether it's, you got to pay them some kind of consulting fee or give them however you get them involved. I think having somebody with that skill set is very important. I mean, I have a full 20 worksheet financial model in Excel that I've built over a number of years that I can plug in, underwrite a restaurant deal in 20 minutes and tell you what the next 10 years are going to look like, and all these different toggles. And I mean, I probably overanalyzed this deal, which that is another, I guess the restaurant business in particular, you don't want to overanalyze it, because you convince yourself not to do it pretty quickly. No, I think, building out, not only is it important for you to understand what bet you're making and what hurdles you need to hit and where things need to be for you to make money, but if you're going to go to a bank or it's any kind of sophisticated landlord, they're going to want to see that, and having that in your back pocket before you even start talking to them is incredibly helpful. Just makes you, they want to know that you got your shit together. That's a good way to show them. It's like, hey, I've been thoughtful about this. Here's what the pro forma looks like. Here's my budget, down to the line item. Obviously all those things move around and change every day, but having a baseline understanding of what revenue you need to do, what your expense load is going to be, those basics, what it's going to cost you to build it, how much working capital you need, all those things are incredibly important to know. And if you don't know those things going in, I think the likelihood that you get burnt is very high.
Yeah.
Unless you're very lucky, or you just have really deep pockets and can absorb, massive changes on a whim. But it's very important. And I would get, if you can't do it, find somebody that can, get them in the loop.
Yeah. Yeah.
I guess my advice, coming from a chef's perspective of opening their first restaurant and looking for a partner, is don't settle for someone just who has deep pockets.
Mhm.
I think one of the things that attracted me to Dallas the most is he's worked in restaurants, but he does have that, real estate and financial background, to know what we need to be doing
Yeah.
financially and how we can get there and stay there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, Chef, when you think about your kitchen team, when you think about the A players on your kitchen team, is there a common characteristic or common trait that they all have? And if so, how do you try and select for that during the hiring process, or do you tease that out during the interview process?
I'm a vibes guy. Like I need to get along with you. I mean, you spend more time with these people than you do. I mean, I see Craig and Mike, my two chef de cuisines, more than I see my wife.
Yeah.
So I need to, be able to be around you, but also I need you to be hungry and want to learn.
Uh-huh.
My philosophy is I can teach you to cook. I can't teach you to care.
Yeah.
So I will take someone who's never worked in a kitchen day in their life, but they want to, over someone who's been in the industry and line cooking for 20 years. Just if you think you know everything, or you think there's one way to do something, that helps me in no way.
Right.
I want to learn from you as much as I want you to learn from me. So I want you to do better every day and want to be the best and do the best, and vice versa. I want them to push that out of me. So that's really what I go for.
And I think I mean, just from my view, that I think the two or three of the strongest guys in the kitchen are guys that have not cooked at a high level before, that came in. One guy came in as a dishwasher. Now he's line cooked and crushing it, great attitude. But it's guys that have not, didn't have a chance to learn bad habits and are curious. And, to Chef's point, just care about the place and want to do good. And he can teach them how to chop a carrot the right way, but teaching them to, show up and give a shit and care about what they're doing is a tougher battle to fight.
Yeah, yeah. I wish there was like a polygraph portion of the interview process where I could ask, can I trust you to do the right thing when I'm not looking? And just have that be just yes or no, just the binary selection process. Just that simple. So last question, where and to whom do y'all look for inspiration, whether it's in the restaurant world or in the larger business world?
That's a good question. I mean,
maybe it's just by eating out,
Yeah, no, there's a guy named David Rodolitz who's been a mentor to me that I look up to a lot. He runs a restaurant group called VCR Group out of New York, but has kind of taken me under his wing. Didn't have to do that, and has been very helpful to me. But is a killer operator. Very generous with his time to me and knowledge. So I look up to him a bunch, and he's been very helpful. Obviously, some of the bigger, guys that read their books and watched them, Gadara and Danny Meyer and all those guys, I obviously look up to them. But and I guess just folks that are successful business leaders that I want to be somebody that people want to go work for. Like that I want. If all my staff would go, I point and they go and would whoop somebody's ass for me, then I've won. And I think they would. So that's, and I think Alex thinks about it the same way. We want to be people that people want to work for and be around, and treat people the right way. And I think that reflects in the way that we treat guests, and what makes I think our restaurant special is we do have a lot of people that care, that are willing to go to bat for us and have bought into what we're trying to do. And so anybody that does that at a high level, I look up to and try to steal from them what I can. But that's my goal as the leader here, is to try to foster that, sense of team and mission, and get everybody to buy in.
Nice.
I guess I have no desire to ever be on TV or that's never, a celebrity chef is not anything I ever want. But I want to be the chef that my peers look up to, that my buddies are like, yeah, I want to, go eat at his restaurant. That's my goal is my friends to, I guess, want to eat my food and come have fun at Mileta.
Yeah, I love that. I know I media will tell you one thing, and the press is always looking for stories and for the next hot thing. But I always take the advice or recommendation of another chef about another chef. I think that is about the highest praise and best recommendation that you could get. So it's great catching up with you guys today. Thanks so much. I really appreciate your time.
Appreciate you. Thanks for having us, man.
All right.
If you're ever in Lexington, come see us.
Okay, I will. Best of luck with Mileta.
All right. Thanks, brother.
Thank you.
Take care. Thanks for watching and listening, tuning in today, y'all. I want you to forward this episode. We don't do paid ads. We don't do promotions. If you got some good content, if you feel like you got good information from this episode, forward it to 2 friends who have a shining career ahead of them in the restaurant industry. Stay humble, stay hungry.